Welcome, everyone, to our special online event, The Power of Shamanic Journeying, Accessing the Invisible Realms for Guidance and Healing. I'm Nick Palizzi, founder of The Sacred Science, and I'll be your host. It is a true honor to introduce you to Sandra Ingerman, a renowned teacher of shamanism who has been awakening her students for more than 30 years. If you're immersed in the world of shamanism, you most likely already know who Sandra is. Her work has been an inspiration to many of us for decades. A few dear friends of mine have studied with her, and the powerful books she has written have changed countless lives, including my own. Here's what we'll be covering in this talk. We only have an hour today, so I'm going to try to get as much as I can from Sandra in that time. And then, at the end of the call, Sandra and I are going to share with everybody how you can take the next step on this ancient healing path with her powerful new course, which we are co-creating together. Very, very exciting. How are you, Sandra?
I'm doing great, and I'm very excited to be co-creating this course with you and having the opportunity to speak to so many people about the power of shamanism.
Right. Well, for me, it's like I don't understand how I had this opportunity to work with you. Like, I knew about you long before you ever knew about me. I was reading your books. I don't even know, a decade ago, and that was it was a huge inspiration to me. I mean, this is how I got in this path. You know, it was people like you who were just pioneering when no one really knew what shamanism was. You were already kind of blazing the trail for us. So I'm deeply, deeply honored.
Yeah, well, it's been quite the journey. That the formal path of being on shamanism started for me about 35 years ago, and so I started practicing formally shamanic journey when I was 29, and I'm 65 now. So I feel like it's been an incredible experience for me, and I know it's surprising for people, but I'm actually a true introvert. It really is my passion for this work. I can truly say that I would not be on the planet today if it wasn't for stepping on the path of shamanism. And so there's just a lot of passion and excitement, and it's just a natural fire that comes up for me in wanting to share this sacred path with as many people as I can.
How did you get on this path to begin with?
Well, the thing about shamanism, I think that a lot of people are confused about is shamanism is spirit driven. So we don't always choose so much to get on this path as much as we're oftentimes picked up and put down on the path. And so you might be listening to this call and saying, I never considered taking a course on shamanism. And then all of a sudden, something wakes up in you and it's like, I think I'm curious. I'd like to explore more. It's like, who made that choice? Did you make that choice? So did all of a sudden spirit wake you up and start to lead you on the path? And I think that that's kind of what happened for me. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I did not grow up in what would be called a spiritual family. They had their own form of spirituality in their own way. My family is an immigrant family, and so they brought over their practices that were important to them, but they weren't really practices that I could relate to. But I was so in love with nature, just this awe and wonder of the beauty of the world around me. When I was a kid, I couldn't believe the colors and how beautiful everything was. And all of a sudden I started talking to the trees and the plants and the birds and the moon and the stars. And they started talking back to me, and I started having wonderful visionary experiences about the magic of our destiny here on Earth. And then, of course, I grew up in the 60s, and I grew up in the drug culture, and seeked alternative ways of accessing visions and wisdom, spiritual wisdom. And in the midst of all that, I had 3 near-death experiences in my life. And so where I ended up in my life was, what do I do with all of this? This is all beautiful. It's wonderful how I can talk to the spirit that lives in all things and get all these visions, but what do I do with it? And so spirit picked me up where I was in life. And I was going for my master's in counseling psychology, and I was putting myself through school, working 2 jobs and taking too many units a quarter. And somebody told me that an anthropologist was coming out from Connecticut. They didn't know what he was teaching a workshop on, but they heard that I can get 2 easy units if I sign. So that's how spirit can actually act in our life and pick us up. And it was a workshop on shamanic journeying. And I had my first shamanic journey, and I met what's called a helping compassionate spirit. And he started to answer all the questions that I had in life. So I was hooked. And that's it's a long way of saying the spiral that I walked on to get onto the shamanic path.
So can we just dive into what shamanism is? I feel like a lot of folks just see an assortment of different practices and rituals, and it doesn't necessarily, it's not obvious necessarily that it's all part of this cohesive fabric that would be something called like a shamanic way of life. Can you just describe that and kind of just, unpack that for us a little bit?
Shamanism is a universal practice that we know dates back at least 100,000 years. The word itself is a Tungus word. It comes from Siberian indigenous culture and is traditionally seen as meaning one who sees in the dark, healer, one who knows. And the beauty of the practice of shamanism is that it is spirit driven. And so when humans entered this amazing planet Earth, they really had no resources or tools for how to survive. And the helping spirits looked down on what was happening in the world, all around the world, because people everywhere around the world all of a sudden were opened up to the world of spirit. And the spirit shared tools and resources and how to talk to the plants and the trees and how to make medicine and how to talk to the spirit of the animals to be able to find food. And so the practice of shamanism has always been a practice of direct revelation. And it's so touching how many people sacrifice their lives all over the world. And so I am sure that most of you who are listening to this call do have ancestors who practice shamanism. But there's been an incredible amount of religious and political persecution against people who have practiced shamanism. So in so many cultures, the practice was actually driven underground. So for example, among the Sami people of Lapland, they had to bury their drums. They're still finding some drums that were buried because of all the persecution for owning a drum. And they came up with a way to do their visionary experiences of singing chants called yoiking, Joik, because they weren't allowed to use the drum, as shamans have used all over the world. And so there was so much sacrifice from our ancestors who were imprisoned or killed or who had their shamanic tools taken away. And it's so beautiful that here we are, so many hundreds of years later, with this amazing resurgence of shamanism all over the world, of people picking up the old shamanic tools and the old shamanic ways again, and honoring our ancestors and allowing the spirits to help us learn the tools that we all need to navigate the incredibly turbulent times that we're living in right now. So back to the practice of shamanism and the tools that it offers. Shamanism is a practice of direct revelation. And what that means is that every one of us is trained by these helping, compassionate spirits who volunteer themselves into our lives to protect us and to keep us healthy and to help us learn how to grow into the best people that we can be and manifest our greatest dreams, which is why we came here to the planet. They're not going to take away the big lessons that we get that teach us how to evolve and grow. Everything that's alive goes through challenges in order to grow. And so the helping spirits aren't going to take that experience away from us. But we feel when we connect with them that we have this source of protection who has our back, who's always willing to shine a light through the dark times so that we can go through our growth experiences, knowing that we have a tremendous amount of love and support lighting our path. And so part of the shamanic practice is this shamanic journey. A shaman is a man or woman who goes into an altered state of consciousness, and in that altered state opens up the veils between the tangible and intangible realms and steps into an entirely different dimension of reality than we live here in what we call the middle world. And in this other reality, it's a transcendent reality. It's filled with these compassionate spirits who come in all forms. They come in the form of animals and plants and trees and insects and algae, and it could be a clam. All the creatures that live in the elements can be an ally for us. The elements are an ally for us: earth, air, water, fire. They're right behind us, wanting to teach us, wanting to share their power with us and give us omens of how to navigate our life to bring more harmony into our life. There are a variety of teachers, mystical beings, religious figures, ancestor spirits that are available through a shamanic journey. And so in all shamanic cultures around the world, shamans go into an altered state of consciousness either by using some form of percussion. The drum has been used around the world for many thousands of years. And also in some cultures, plant spirits are used to have those visionary experiences of what all shamans experience in what we call the non-ordinary realms. And so this is a very core part of shamanism, is the shamanic journey. But what happens in our culture is we tend to get very attracted to methods of working. And what's very important to understand is that shamanism is actually a way of life. And so I started this conversation talking about that we're actually entering into the world of shamanism kind of against the flow of the river of life, in that in a shamanic culture, when people were born, first of all, their gifts were recognized, what their unique gift and talent and strength they're bringing to the community so that the community can survive. And so in our culture, we're taught, don't focus too much on your imagination or your creativity. There's only a few creative geniuses on the planet. learn how to follow the rules of society, don't shine your light too bright, don't have too big outcomes or you're going to get disappointed. And the opposite was true in a shamanic culture. When children were born, their gifts, their talents, the unique strengths they were bringing to the community, their brilliance was nurtured, and they always knew what that was. They knew what the strength they were bringing to the community was. And they understood energy, and that our words are energy and they create a vibration. Our thoughts are energy and create a vibration. Our imagination and how we daydream is all how we energetically manifest form onto this planet. And how to live in harmony with nature and to talk to the spirit in all things. These are tools and resources that were taught to children before they ever needed to be introduced to the world of spirit. And in our culture, we're introducing people to the world of spirit and then teaching them how to be a human being after that. And we need to reverse that process, or at least do them simultaneously.
All right, so many questions for you. Okay. I guess for people who are watching right now, who might feel as though this is something that shamans do, not necessarily something that anyone can do. I think that there's also that kind of, I guess, a lack of good information around shamanism floating through the ethers right now. But is it something that anyone can do? Can somebody learn how to journey? And, you know, whether it's with percussion or whether it's with plant medicines, is it something that anyone can do and that anyone should do?
The core answer is yes. And then I'll go back to that. So to me and to many people on the shamanic path, they're, and I'm not trying to simplify the path of shamanism in any way, but there are essentially two different paths that we enter into with shamanism. One is the call to be a shaman, and that means to divine information for the community, to perform healing methods on community members, and to basically be the person who creates harmony between the transcendent realms and life here on Earth. And that has been a very huge role for one or two people to be called to in a community to help. But the thing about shamanism is that it evolves over time. And so what we're seeing today is, number one, we really can't have 2 or 3 shamans for New York City. We really need people stepping onto the path who are being called to the path. But there are different types of calling. There's the calling to, I just want to be in service, I want to be a healer. And on that particular path, it's the spirits really who choose you, and they design your life, and a whole series of initiations that, trust me, are not pleasant. Nobody in a shamanic culture ever wanted to be called to the path of being a shaman, because the initiations, they keep bringing you to a place of woundedness, to really always have an open heart, to be in compassion to the suffering of the world. And yet there are different levels of being called to the shamanic path. And those other levels are who I'm listening, I'm reading about shamanism, I'm learning more about shamanism, I'm listening to you talk. I would like to explore this path, but I don't know if I want to be a shaman. And again, that's not a decision you would ever make. The spirits make that call for you. But everybody can engage in the practice of direct revelation. And we need everybody engaging in the practice of direct revelation. Direct revelation means you have your own spiritual authority to be able to work with your own soul, your own spirit's knowing, your own divine self, but you also have the ability to access these helping, compassionate spirits who volunteer themselves to every single person when they're born. Whether you practice shamanism or not, you have helping spirits around you from a shamanic point of view, and you can engage in a practice of shamanic journeying to get your own direct revelation of how to create a healthier life for yourself, how to manifest a job that is meaningful for you, not just something that you're doing because you have to, how to create relationships that mirror back to your own growth and evolution. How do you start to be an active participant in our global community so that you also know that you have the power to create change right now, and so that we don't leave that job to just a few, because from a shamanic point of view, it's every single one of us who were born at this time on the planet to share our gifts, to be able to bring healing to the planet at this particular time. So yes, everybody can journey, and it is our responsibility for all of us to live a shamanic way of life, because that's really the medicine that we need to bring harmony back to the planet again.
So a lot of people who are watching, guaranteed, because I'm one of the people who are part of this and I feel this way, they're working on themselves. I'm working on myself. I'm either working on physical things, which I clearly am, and a lot of people are, psychological things and emotional things, spiritual things. What is the shamanic perspective on healing emotional and physical illness and challenge?
Yeah, so in classic shamanism, a person didn't actually work with a self-healing model. Where the self-healing model came in was all people were trained in an indigenous culture, and I'm not trying to over-romanticize indigenous cultures. Every human being on planet Earth has their own issues. But in indigenous cultures, again, people were taught how to live a life of harmony. And so where what we would call self-healing today would come in would be how children were taught to use their daydreams and their thoughts and their words and their connection with nature to create health. And so I'll circle back around to that after I talk about how shamans classically work with illness. And so if a person fell ill in a shamanic culture, they would visit the shaman, and usually it wasn't a private session. The whole community would show up, because again, every community member was so important to the entire health. The community was seen as an organism, and each person impacted the whole immune system of the community. And so it was important for each person to get the healing that they needed. And so a person would show up to the shaman, and then the shaman would enter into an altered state of consciousness to consult with his or her helping spirits about what was the spiritual disharmony that this person was carrying that was creating an emotional or physical illness. So in shamanism, when we talk about healing, we're looking at what is at a balance on a spiritual level that is manifesting on an emotional or physical level. And when the shaman works with his or her helping spirits, there are certain diagnoses, certain common diagnoses that the shaman might be given. And they all go together. You can't separate them out, but I'll talk about them separately. One diagnosis would be if an ally for a person, a person's guardian spirit, left them and they would be left without power. And when a person is left without power, how this typically manifests in a person's life is with chronic types of condition, chronic depression, chronic suicidal tendencies. Somebody who always says to me, I always have a cold, I always have the flu, I can't maintain my immune system. That would be a sign to me of a loss of power. A real loss of power is chronic misfortune. As I shared, the spirits will not protect you from growth experiences. But when a person starts to talk to me and describe symptoms as if, wow, it seems like they're being cursed or something. Their cat dies and their partner leaves them, and then they're evicted from their house, and then they lose their job, and then somebody hacks their computer account, where it's endless. That would be a sign to me that something unusual is going on, and I should at least consult with my helping spirits to see if power needs to be returned. If power needs to be returned, everything is done with the helping spirit. So the shaman is a hollow bone or an empty reed or a channel for the helping spirits to work through. And so in that particular case, the helping spirits would travel with a shamanic practitioner to find a volunteer guardian spirit that was willing to return back to them in their life. And then when you look at different shamanic cultures around the world, there are different ways to return a helping spirit, either blowing it into their body or even making a carving of the animal or the being that's volunteering itself. And that carving would be put up in the house of the person, now having that protective force in the person's house. So there are many different ways, many different ceremonies that a shaman would use to work with power loss. And then another thing that could be lost is a person's soul. And the definition of soul that I'm using is soul is our essence, it's our life force, it's that part of ourselves that keeps us alive. And whenever we suffer any kind of trauma, it's seen from a shamanic point of view that a piece of our soul separates from ourselves and enters into the transcendent realms where it's safe. And in almost all shamanic cultures, soul loss is seen as the major cause of illness. And so in our culture, what would cause soul loss would be any kind of abuse. Sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, being in an accident, being in a war, being in surgery. I oftentimes hear people say, I've never quite been the same since my anesthesia, and I don't mean that in a good way. Being in an accident, if I'm going to be in I always use the same example, it has a lot of meaning for me. If I'm going to be in a head-on car collision, the very last place I want to be at the point of impact is in my body. My body can't handle that kind of trauma. So our psyches have this brilliant self-protect mechanism where you go away while the trauma is occurring. But from a shamanic point of view, that part does not come back on its own. Typically, a shaman has to intervene and take a shamanic journey to actually find where that essence has traveled to and to physically bring it back. And again, there are a variety of ceremonies that are used throughout the world to perform what's called a soul retrieval, to bring back those lost parts that lost either from abuse or surgery, accident, anything that creates shock. PTSD is soul loss. Anything that creates shock, our psyche wants to escape this experience. And it could be the death of a loved one, grief, drugs could do that. And then the manifestation of soul loss would be what we call dissociation in psychology, a person who's kind of living more out of their body than fully embodied, somebody who says, I always feel like I'm observing life, but I'm not quite participating in life. So in psychology, we talk about dissociation, but we don't talk about what dissociates. In shamanism, we talk about that it's a part of our essence that dissociates, and then it's the role of the shaman to bring it back. So dissociation is a symptom of soul loss, and then chronic depression, chronic suicidal tendencies, just like power loss, could be a symptom of soul loss. Immune deficiency problems would be a symptom of soul loss. And addictions, because we're always trying to fill ourselves up with something from the outside because something's missing inside of us. And so whether it's addiction to drugs or any kind of substances, food, relationships, work, I think we're dealing with planetary soul loss because everybody's looking at how much can we gather on a material level. And so we're saying that as a planet, human beings are feeling empty. So we're looking for money's more important than life. If we have to kill a species so that we can have more material wealth, a lot of people would make that choice. And nobody would make that choice who had their full soul. Nobody would make that choice. You would never say money is more important than life if you were filled with soul. And so if you're missing some of your power, if you're missing some of your soul, what happens is an intrusion might come in, what we call a spiritual intrusion, or a spiritual blockage is a term you might be able to relate to, enters into the body, and that causes a localized pain or illness. And so a person who has a form of cancer, lung cancer, liver cancer, or a chronic neck problem, or a chronic knee problem, or it could be chronic anger or chronic depression, because again, shamans look at the spiritual cause of illness that's manifesting on an emotional or physical level. And so the shaman, when he or she works with their helping spirits, they look with their strong eye into the body of the client and see something that shouldn't be there. Like I might see when I'm working with somebody who has liver cancer, thousands of red ants. So red ants might be a power animal, but thousands of red ants in somebody's liver, that's a disturbing image to me. And so it's my job as the shaman to suck out or pull out that spiritual intrusion from the body, and to bring that intrusion back to an element in earth, because it's not seen as evil, it's just seen as misplaced energy. And where this misplaced energy comes from is from negative thought forms. And this is a very big topic in shamanism, and will be a very big topic in our course, is that there's a difference between expressing what we're feeling and sending the energy, because in shamanism it's understood that thoughts are things. And so when I say, I am so angry at you for what you just said, it's my right as a human being to be that angry and to express. So in shamanic cultures, people were taught how to express their feelings in a very healthy way. But then when I'm just saying I'm so angry at you, and that energy is being sent either to that person or out into the collective, where somebody without their power or without their soul is walking down a crowded street, and boom, that intrusion comes in, or it fills the collective on the planet, causing the dense energies that we're experiencing today. So in shamanism, it's taught that yes, we express, but that it's very important that we transform the energy behind what we are expressing into love and light, so that we're not sending psychic arrows, psychic darts into the world. In shamanic cultures, they did use psychic darts and psychic arrows as a form of psychic warfare. That was before there were bombs and guns like we have. So people fought throughout history. But the time on the planet today, and I don't need to explain this to anybody, is we have to stop sending all this spiritual intrusion, psychic darts, psychic arrows into the collective, because it's making us sick. And so shamans extract or remove these intrusions, but then people have to learn how to work with their emotions on a healthy level. And again, that's where we come into shamanism as a way of life. And then another cause of illness is if we're not filled with our power and or soul. A spirit, a deceased spirit who has not crossed over, what we would call a ghost or a poltergeist, saw that there was an empty apartment in your body and moved in. And so now you have a deceased spirit who's sharing your body with you. And from a shamanic point of view, when we die, if everything goes right, and I say right with quotation marks, we leave this middle world with this earth school. We came here to learn how to grow and evolve. And when we die, it's time for us to go back to the transcendent realms, just like where the spirits live, back home to source. And sometimes what happens is with suicide or a terrorist attack or an accident or war, spirits get confused at the point of death, and they don't actually know they've died, or they don't want to leave the middle world, and so they become wandering spirits. They might inhabit a house, and we have to get somebody to get the ghost out of our house. Or they might move into our body if we're not filled up with our own power and soul. And then it's the role of the shaman to do what's called a depossession, where the shaman actually has to convince the spirit that they're deceased and that it's time for them to transcend back to source again, which is their home. And that type of work that the shaman engages in to heal the deceased is what's called psychopomp work, which is a Greek word which means conductor of souls. And so the big picture of when the shaman looks at a person who is complaining of an illness, the shaman might see power loss, soul loss, a spiritual intrusion, a possessing spirit. And then there's hundreds of different ceremonies that the helping spirits might give a shaman to actually perform that kind of healing. And also today, shamans in traditional cultures are really looking a lot at our ancestral connections, because in our culture, due to modern psychology and how we're always looking at what we didn't get from our families, we don't always honor what we did get from our families and what we're bringing forward and how they have our backs and how they're supporting us, but there's that process of reciprocity where we honor them and they really honor us in return. And in our culture, many people have a lot of bad feelings about maybe the abuse that they suffered in their family. So some of the ceremonies to honor our ancestors aren't being carried on, and shamans today are actually seeing that as a form of illness. And so that's the big picture of what a shaman would do to perform a ceremony. And then it would be the role of the client to do their own healing work of what changes do they need to make in their life that would bring them back into a state of harmony that would create long-term healing instead of just short-term healing or something like a spiritual aspirin.
Thank you for that. A question. We're talking about shamans as being the figures who would do this intervention on a soul level. Is it possible for an individual to do an intervention like a soul retrieval, for instance, on themselves using shamanic journeying, or at least get benefit with something regarding that? Is there a way to heal those missing parts of yourself on your own, or does it tend to be another person that needs to do it? And I guess the part two to that question is, to the extent that you can do it, can you share a practice that someone could use to start intervening on their own behalf?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Some people actually get shamanic healings in their dreams. A helping spirit or a divine force will show up in a dream and will say, you need an extraction or soul retrieval, and you get that soul retrieval in a dream. And some people spontaneously in a shamanic journey, a helping spirit will say, you need a soul retrieval, a depossession. There's a disharmonious energy that needs to be healed in your body. And so in that particular way, a dream or a journey can work for people. You can also ask before you go to sleep at night. You can ask. I was once cured of it was such a painful, it wasn't life-threatening, but it was a painful illness. And doctors told me that they couldn't help me, that I was just going to live in pain for the rest of my life. And every night before I went to bed, I asked for a dream. And I had to wait. Part of shamanism is learning how to be persistent, and that shamanism is a way of life. So we're looking at the big picture, the long term. And I just asked every night. I don't know how many months I had to wait, but all of a sudden a dream came to me where a shaman came to me in my dream and literally pulled the pain out of my body, and it never returned. And that was over 30 years ago. So asking before you go to sleep at night for healing, or if you do engage in the process of journeying, asking the helping spirits for healing is a way to work. Another way to work is with a process that we'll be learning in the course of learning how to experience who you are beyond your body and beyond your mind. Who we are beyond our body and mind is spiritual light. And so when you go inside of yourself and experience a star growing and growing and radiating its light throughout your body, or the sun or a flame, and letting that light flow through your body and just absorb it into every one of your cells, like a dry sponge that you put in water, or a flower that soaks in the rain in a drought, or a flower that soaks in the sun. If you do that, just even put on a nice music tape without words, a track that you like. Tape really dates me, doesn't it? Putting on a music track that's spiritually expansive for 10, 15 minutes and experience that light shining through you. I cannot tell you the miracle stories that we're getting of healing, of just allowing our own light to flood through our body, creates healing on emotional and physical levels that are beyond our wildest dreams.
I'm going to try that after this call because that seems like it's absolutely appropriate and necessary for me right now. That's an amazing. That last one really got me. Isn't it funny how when you hear about something or you come across the right thing, it's like your body just gives you like a full on I mean, maybe that's just me, but like I get the bodily yes. Just oh yeah, that's please, yes, we need that. That's amazing. Thank you for all of this. I know that we're running out of time here, so I kind of want to dive in for everyone who's watching. I know there's a lot of people who are probably wondering, like, how do I take a deeper dive? How do I, this is a great intro, but how do I start, learning these practices and bringing them into my life? So can we just talk about the course that we're creating a little bit?
Absolutely. So this is a step-by-step course in starting to help you enter into the world of the shaman. And when I say that, not the shaman who goes through all those initiations, but the shaman that is your destiny. This is your destiny to now step into your role of being part of the process of direct revelation, to help yourself, because as you help yourself, that we're all connected. Life is all connected. The whole web of life is interdependent. And as you help yourself, every change that you make ripples through the entire web of life. And so part of the course is about how to help you step into your role with direct revelation and learn how to work with power animals, teachers in human form who might appear as mystical beings, divine forces, religious figures, ancestors. How do we work with middle world spirits, the trees, the plants? How do we speak to the animals and the insects and the microscopic beings that we share this planet with so that we feel more meaning in life? These are allies for us. The wind, the earth, water, fire, allies for us. So learning how to make contact with all these different helping spirits that live in what we call in shamanism the lower world, and the middle world, which is non-ordinary reality to here, and the upper world, where you'll learn how to talk to guardian spirits, the hidden folk, those beings in the Davic realms, power animals, teachers, nature beings, elements. And so part of the course is about helping you to identify a wealth of helping spirits who are teaching you all the time and who will share guidance and healing with you in the journeys that I lead you on, but will also teach you how to watch for signs that they give you as you walk through the world on a daily basis. And at the same time, we're going to be performing ceremonies, healing ceremonies, where a whole global community will be coming together to work in behalf of each other. And then there are going to be times where we're going to be doing healing ceremonies for the planet and species that are really suffering right now. So every session will be a journey to work with helping spirits to gain healing and wisdom for yourself, and then coming together with the global community to perform a guided ceremony that I'll lead for your own healing and also for healing the planet. And then also looking at such topics of how do we manifest? What are the actual steps? what are the actual physical steps we take every day in the ceremonies that we do to manifest our dreams in life? And then what are the core attitudes and beliefs that are blocking us from these dreams, and performing ceremonies around that together as a group? And then how do we tap into our inner light? And not only how does that help us heal on a physical and emotional level, but when we radiate that out to the world, how does that help to heal the planet and uplift all of life? And so it's a full course, a lot of information, a lot of experiential work of learning how to work with helping spirits for your own growth and evolution and healing, and also how to work with helping spirits and perform ceremonies in behalf of all of life on this great earth. So I'm really delighted to be able to share an incredible wealth of information with you.
It's such an honor to be able to bring it forward with you. Just some hard details. 7 weeks. They're going to be get access to sort of a membership type area where there's going to be all kinds of resources and other materials for them to engage with and interact with on a weekly basis. So we're giving you all of that stuff with the calls for each week recorded every time, so that just if you miss them, it's not a big deal. You can go into the membership area, watch the recorded calls. If you miss a session with Sandra, we make sure that it all kind of stays in an archive that you have lifetime access to.
And also, it's really important to understand we work outside of time in shamanic work. And so whenever you step into the session and whenever you step into the healing ceremony that we have done during session, you're actually adding exponential healing energy that keeps growing over time. And that's the beauty of shamanism, is that this work will continue to work on our collective energy in visible and in invisible ways.
So good, so incredible. So everybody who's watching, down below this video, there's all the details for the course, as well as pricing and how you can register for it. We're opening it up to you right now, the Sacred Science community, and also Sandra's community. This is very inexpensive for the level of training you're going to get, but that's what we try to do, is bring this to you guys in a way that as many people can join as possible. Does it make sense, Sandra, for us to go through the list of weekly topics? I know we have a list down there. Should we talk through each one, or what do you think?
Well, absolutely, we can. The very first session in shamanism, when you look at the different cave paintings and petroglyphs and different artifacts that are left, and the stories that have been shared through time, it's clear that all shamanic cultures recognized that there were three realms in what we call non-ordinary reality: the unseen realms, the other world, the dream time. These are all terms that different cultures use for the non-ordinary realms. And so it's seen that there's the lower world, the middle world, and the upper world, and spirits inhabit all these different worlds that we can consult with. There's such a wealth of wisdom. So we start our first session going to the lower world and seeing who shows up for us as a guardian spirit in our life. And we start off, asking some questions that are important to us. And of course, I'll be sharing what are the best questions to ask in a shamanic journey. Trust me, I've learned a lot in 35 years of journeying of how to phrase the best questions. And then we'll start to create that sacred space that we're going to be working in for 7 weeks and longer, because our sacred space where we set up our altar is available forever. We can't dismantle that non-ordinary reality. So we'll start setting up our space where we'll be working together. And then in the second session, we'll be going to the upper world and exploring what's the upper world like for us? How is that different from the lower world? What does the upper world hold for us? And asking to meet a teacher who will actually perform some healing work on our behalf to take us to a healing territory, such as the river of grief or a crystal healing cave, to maybe get a soul retrieval for yourself or the healing that you need. And then we'll perform our first ceremony in our sacred space together in behalf of ourselves and for the planet. And then we're going to start to session 3. We work with the middle world, and we work with elements, and what elements are earth, air, water, fire are volunteering themselves to us as allies, and how can we start to learn how to harness their power so that we are actually working more in harmony with them, and that they're a real teacher for us in our life. They have so much to share. And then we'll be performing a ceremony of working with the elements too. And then we're going to move into how do the actual process, what are the steps, what are the practices that we have to focus on a daily basis to manifest our dreams? And what is our soul dreaming for? That might be different than what our ego and personality is looking for. What is the deepest part of our soul calling for in our life? What's the passion for our soul? And how do we manifest that? And so we'll be looking at that topic and exploring it very deeply in session 4, and then performing a ceremony together, a fire ceremony together, a virtual fire ceremony together, where we're all going to put our dreams into the fire and support each other as a global community. And then in session 5, we start to look at and explore what are the core attitudes and beliefs that are blocking me from using my creative energy. And once we identify that, we step into ceremonial work again and work with fire, which is a great transmuter, a great transformer, to give an effigy or a talisman, again, that we make in the virtual realms, and give to fire to transform for us. And then in session 6, we work a little bit more with shamanism as a way of life and initiation in shamanism. And we're actually going to go through a whole dismemberment journey, which is a classic initiation visionary experience in every shamanic culture. And then in session 7, we're going to work with the process of not just how we experience our spiritual authentic light, but how we can use that to help to heal others, loved ones, friends, clients, and also ceremonies that we can do and that we can bring to our community to work with challenging life events, any terrorist attacks that happen on the planet, climatic events that are happening, and just generally improving the quality of health of the environment and the planet. It's very powerful work, and I'll talk about the scientific research that we've done with the practice and the results that we've been able to show over the 20 years of working with this particular practice. So it's so exciting for me to be able to share all of this.
So I'm just going to recap this, just so everybody knows, just what is actually involved, what's being offered. You get 7 90-minute class sessions with Sandra. You have unlimited recordings to all these class sessions. You can download MP3 versions of them if you would prefer to listen rather than watch on your computer. There's PDF transcripts of each class so that, if you want to read through them, keep a notebook, which a lot of people do. I'm sure a lot of your students do that, Sandra. Just keep notes on all this stuff and really there's so much information, and the amount of new territory, new inner landscape you're going to be covering is going to require, I would highly recommend a notebook and binder. Also, there's limited space available. We try to keep these things as big as we can, but because of the bandwidth it takes to put something like this together, there are limited spaces available. So if you're feeling called to this path, then now is the time. So anything else to talk about? I feel like this was an incredible call as usual, and I'm just so excited to be doing this with you. And honestly, I don't think there's a better time in our personal evolution and our human evolution for something like this to be made available.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I really want everybody to understand that shamanism is a life path. It's not something that you do for 7 weeks. And so I can honestly say that my students who took a 7-week course with me a few years ago are still working on each module again and again, because every time you do the work, you go so much deeper. I'm still working. A lot of the work that we're doing together in these 7 weeks, after 35 years, I'm still doing the same work that we're going to be doing together. And so these are tools that are going to carry you through a lifetime.
Yeah, it's interesting. For a while, and this just kind of shows my where I'm on the path. But for a while, we're doing this work expecting that there would be some place where the work would stop needing to happen. Like, you do the work, like, oh, I'm going to arrive. And then you realize, you're like, oh, wait a second, the work is the path, and the work is the destination. Like, that is what it is, and it's just the willingness and the elasticity of our psyche and the ability to kind of just keep on keeping on, and learning new tools is really what it's all about. So it's an honor to be here doing this work with you.
And just one more thing, because I know we're running out of time. Joyful work, people get into, oh my God, I can't add one more thing into my life. I'm so stressed out. But the work that I do, shamanism is my life, and I don't even think about the practices I'm doing anymore. They just are who I am. And so it's not one more thing you have to do. It's about becoming more embodied and opening up to more magic as we open up to the multidimensional nature of the unseen realms, and also what we're missing in the seen realms, because there's a lot of dimensions to reality here. So it's not, oh my God, this is going to be one more thing I have to do. This is more about dropping into the magic of life, and the working with you so that it's just who you become during the day, not so much that you have to do more things during the day to be on a shamanic path.
So well put. It's to everyone watching, I hope this has been extremely helpful. I hope that you've gotten some new insights that you didn't have before you came on. And I really encourage you, if you feel called to this path, to scroll below and take a look. And if it feels like a yes, then join us. It's going to be an incredible ride, and like everything that we do, it's going to be high integrity and really what's the right word? Transformative, I guess. Transformative on all levels. So, Sandra, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, me too, and blessings to everybody.